we go. There's the words on the page, and my handsome self over here in the corner. For now, let's go. Okay. So, in the editing process where we got to, we were following Jack, Jenny, Matthew, Antonia, Aron, Grendel, Lillian, and I think that was everybody in the town of Megacia. But they were currently working their way through what would be, in the game, was an old party quest called Romeo and Juliet. So I have kind of given it a written version and kind of made it into the story version, so to speak. Hopefully it'll be at least entertaining on that front. Okay, that might work. In there. Okay, so from last time, they are working on getting into a particular room because they actually need to get in there for a particular thing. Matthew managed to find, or Alden, who is Jenny's pet, Celion, is kind of like a lion/dog-like creature, and found the key card they needed to actually open this room. So they did find the key card. They opened the room, and now they need to rush in. And that's going to be kind of hard, especially since the things that they are dealing with aren't exactly friendly. So, Jack, Jenny, get in there, Matthew shouted, pulling on the door to let them in, but not before Grendel shot them with a beam of holy light.
Hurry! That spell will only protect you for a short while,
he shouted before the door closed behind them. Before the door closed. Okay, I see. Leaving the others to deal with the army of droids. Wave after wave of Huroids would come at them. Aron, Matthew, and Lillian sweeping... Yeah, that's what we want. Sweeping through hundreds of... Sweeping through dozens. Not hundreds. Dozens. Dovens. No, not dovens. Dozens. Sweeping through dozens of them with their most... Sweeping through dozens with their most powerful attacks. Okay, get rid of you. Potent attacks. No, we'll keep powerful. Let's see. Oh, okay, I see what's going on there. Alright. The battle was just beginning to take its toll. Ah, okay. On the group when Matthew heard the hollow banging on the door. Okay. Quickly he swiped the key card, punched in the number, and hauled... Let's see. And hauled the door open as Jack and Ginny came running out, coughing and heaving with pale skin.
Get them to higher ground,
Aron shouted. Grendel took either one under his arms and teleported to a high catwalk, getting them away from the battle. Matthew slammed the door shut, grabbed Antonia, and threw her over his shoulder. Okay. He hopped up... No. Shoulder and hopped to the catwalk. Let's see. What's going on here? Grabbed Antonia and... Oh, okay. Matthew slammed the door shut, grabbed Antonia, threw her over his shoulder, and hopped to the catwalk where Aron, Romeo, and Lillian waited for them. Alden was the last to jump up to the platform, gently nuzzling Jenny's arm as she lay on the ground, coughing and heaving. Okay, we'll accept potent this time. Grendel cast a potent sacred spell over the two of them, the color beginning to come back. The color returning to their faces as thick black liquid spurted from. Okay. Over. Let's see. Over them. Okay. Okay. Every time they coughed. As soon as they were away from the door, the Huroids turned their destructive attention back to it. "Are you all right?" Oran asked, catching his breath and leaning against Maha.
They inhaled too much aura from the room after my spell wore off, but they'll be fine,
Grendel answered. It was a few minutes more than anticipated, but just as they were to leave, Alden started to tug on Jenny's sleeve. "Did you find something, Alden?" Jenny asked, still a little dizzy from the aura. Alden's eyes lit up, and he wagged his tail slightly as he purred in his throat. "I'll take that as a yes," she mumbled as Alden turned and began leading them to a small room where another door like the homunculi security door was built. Ah. Where another door was built into the wall. Where another door waited? Similar to the... No. Another door waited. Okay. A small keypad. Okay, so we're going to get rid of small here. A keypad beside it had a skeleton leaning against the wall underneath it. Lillian knelt and reached for the ID card hanging on the coat it wore. She showed it to the others, where the name Dr. Orden DeLange stood out in bold black letters. Matthew took it and slid the card through the keypad. Come on. Give me this one. Okay. Matthew took it, slid the card through the keypad, and punched in the code again, making the door unlock with a heavy-sounding bolt. No, unlock its heavy bolt. Okay, so let's get the music going on my son. Oh. That's a little loud. I just want background music. I don't want just blaring music loud. I just want background music. There we go. Like I said, I won't be able to put it up on stream, the music up on stream, because I will probably have the entire thing muted. But you are welcome to listen along by using the link in the chat over there for the playlist that I am listening to. It swung out to reveal a hallway with doors lining either side of the hall, and another giant steel door at the end. Oops. Let me zoom in here for you guys so you can see. The group walked through the halls, checking each door carefully. Some were locked, while others were dark or housed cages. Metal beasts growled through the bars when the light would come in. When they When they reached the metal door at the end, another keypad was there, but there was no keycard slot. Jack pressed his ear to the door, listening to the two voices on the other side. Oh, I need a period there.
Hewlett, are you sure it will work? You have nothing to worry about. With the addition of the girl's life, the reaction will work perfectly.
Jack squinted his eyes as he listened, and then heard the first voice speak again.
Well, Julianne, you've resisted me for so long, but now you'll be a part of me whether you want to or not.
The sound of a girl struggling came through, but he couldn't understand what she was saying. Your girl's in there. It sounds like someone's going to use her for something. Is there a way to get through the keypad? He asked. Jenny examined the keypad. Jenny examined it before readying her bow. I don't see a way. Break it down, Jenny ordered. Ordered. Romeo's eyes widened as he ran to the door and began banging on it. Okay. And banged. There we go. That works a little better. Okay, let's see. Romeo's eyes widened as he ran to it and banged on the door. Julianne, can you hear me? Julianne! Jack slammed him against the wall. Are you stupid? You just gave us away! Just as Romeo was about to answer, a wind curled around Matthew as he drew his katana. While he drew his katana, his cloak becoming the serrated form on the blade. He swung with blinding speed as dark violet flames tore through the air. Using up all the gathered orbs, a giant green seal appeared, leaving molten scars on the surface. How strong is that halberd of yours, Lily? Matthew panted. It's pretty strong, but... Matthew interrupted her as he grabbed it. Bright blue dragon's wings sprouted from his back, and a tail swung around like a cat as the halberd froze over. Everyone stood to the sides as Matthew charged down the hall. Frost forming on the ground as he swung through the door, shattering the frozen metal. Behind it was an older man working on a giant biological machine, while another man stood next to a girl, running his finger up her jawline. Julianne! Romeo shouted as he rushed in. The man next to Julianne. Okay. The man beside... Stop it! There we go. The man beside Julianne grabbed Romeo's shirt, picking him off the ground with his mechanical arm. Russelon, I should have known you were behind this, Romeo growled. Russelon threw him to the side with a huff. Jack and Jenny rushed in, bouncing off a force field and flopping to the ground.
Yes, Romeo, it was me. It was always me.
Do you think the Great Circle collapsed because the ground couldn't withstand the stress? I spent many years training under Maid and Carson before Delang came. I was about to be given the honor of becoming the leader of Magatia once Alcaster retired. But when he came, everything shifted to him. Everything! And I was left with nothing! I didn't go through all those hard years of training just to have a stranger take it away in fewer than 6 months. I will not stand for another being made leader of Magatia for so little effort. Russelon fumed, clenching his hand so tightly the nails on his human hand cut his skin. So, as DeLange was initiating his experiment, I was the one to tear his formula apart. The explosion caused me to lose my left eye and left arm. Left eye and arm. Which made replaced with machines and exiled me from ever learning from Carson again. In the ensuing chaos of their investigation, I went through everything of Dr. DeLange's and created this, my own eternal body. It will grant me the recognition to be made successor and the rightful place as head of Magatia. Russelon's eyes were wild and unfocused as the other man, Ulette, made the final preparations. Oh, hello. I got a thing over here that I need to looky. Okay, so there we go. Back at it.
Russelon, it's ready,
Ulette called with a satisfied grin. Russelon tore the robe from his body, revealing portions where metal plates replaced his skin and the prosthetic arm.
Russelon, what on earth have you done to yourself?
Romeo asked, as Aran helped him to his feet. Russelon looked over his shoulder with saddened eyes.
My body isn't going to last much longer.
The medicine I take for my body to accept the prosthetics has taken its toll, and is slowly killing me, making different organs fail. As each one fails, Maid replaces it with a mechanical one. But that requires even more medicine, killing me all the quicker. He sighed as he looked at the large body strapped to a steel slab. The skin in some places was missing, revealing the mechanical devices inside, becoming green from the copper wiring that ran throughout the body.
But that will no longer be of any worry. Not with this body.
Oh, I want to add some emphasis there.
Then why do you need Julianne?
Romeo demanded, tearing away from Aran's grip and rushing at him, slamming against the force field and pounding on it with his fists.
Russelon smiled as if taunting him. The energy required to jumpstart my body has to come from somewhere. I couldn't find the notes about starting the body once the transfer was complete. So with the help of Ulette, I managed this. Whether she survives is no longer my concern. Yes.
Is not my concern. There we go. That's what I want. All right. So let's see. I need to take a look at something real quick. Huh. Okay. That's interesting. Here, let me look over here. Wow. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Let's see. Let me do this. There we go. That works a little better. What am I? Where was I? Whether she survives is not my concern. Romeo grabbed Lillian's halberd, swinging it against the force field with all his might. You all are so simple-minded, Rosalind grinned as Eulette strapped him down to another table, clamping on hoses, wires, and other harnesses to him. Computers scrolled through various checks and commands, while the new body twitched and jerked as the servos warmed. Romeo began swinging harder as the others joined in, trying to overload the field. I wish Helen were here right about now, Matthew grunted. Well, she's not. We're all this girl's got. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that, because that's how Jack talks. Jack shouted, his fist slamming into the field in a steady, thunderous rhythm. Just as Eulette finished the last harness, he pulled a heavy switch. The group pounded the field all the harder when Russelon's original body went limp, while Eulette typed away at a keyboard. Aran broke through the field with one final swing, allowing Jack to fly toward Eulette. Just before he could reach him, Eulette hit the enter key on the keyboard. Julianne screamed at the top of her lungs, her shrill voice heard all over Megacia. Jack lobbed a mana grenade. Did I spell that wrong? I did. At the field generators, allowing the others to come through. Matthew unleashed 2 solar scythes, each slicing through the apparatus next to Julianne. Right. Only 1 L. Julianne fell silent and limp as Romeo rushed to her, patting her face and calling her name. But she remained still as Matthew and Lillian tore the restraints off the chair. Julianne, answer me! Romeo shouted. But she slumped into Romeo's arms on the floor. Eulette typed madly at the keyboard as the restraints holding Russelon's new body opened. Matthew growled as he turned back to the body, running at it and drawing the doom. A blast of sacred light ignited from the blade and came down so hard that the point whistled. His swing was stopped by the body's hands catching the blade, catching it inches from its face.
Come now, is that the best you can do?
Russelon asked, opening the colorless eyes and tossing Matthew aside. He stood to his full 7-foot height and looked over his body as if becoming accustomed to it.
Eulette, we've done it.
All right. Going back to the others who are back in Ariant and their dealings with what could be a giant cactus. The 5 of them ran through the streets of Ariant, nearing the palace, careful to avoid the large cracks in the ground. But even coming this far, there was still no sign of whatever had been born in the palace. Nathan's greave hit something on the ground, seeing that it was an officer of the Cactus Army. Oh, by the way, for those of you who don't know, a greave in I could be wrong about this because I'm not like 100% sure on it, but I believe a greave is the name given to like the armor boots that you would wear on like full plate armor. So that's what it is. I mean, yes, there is grieve as in sad, boo-hoo, crying like that. But it's said the same, but it's spelled differently, and it means something completely different. He jumped back and readied his spear, but the creature didn't move. Nathan carefully rolled it over to see the face of it. Okay. Get rid of these. The face was contorted and dry, resembling a skull. Come on. Again he jumped back, but lost his balance, readying to catch himself when a sharp pain shot up his arm. Nathan clenched his jaw hard, trying to keep from screaming. Helen teleported to him, holding up a plasma ball for light. A giant thorn from a fallen cactus had driven through his leather glove and hand when he fell. Olsen cut the thorn from the cactus and broke off the upper half. Nathan readied himself for the blast of pain as Olsen pulled the thorn from his hand, followed by Helen healing the wound. Nathan nodded as most of the pain went away, but there was still a dull ache where it had been. As they silently crept to the palace, they found more dead cactus soldiers. Whatever had been made, dismiss that, was either becoming more powerful or killed all of these. Okay. The sounds of cracking stone thundered through the night as the walls cracked just as they entered the throne room. No. The sounds of cracking stone thundered through the night as the walls... The sounds of cracking stone thundered through the night as the walls split as they entered the throne room. Olsen backed against the wall and crept to the door, peeking around the corner, then flattening himself. His face pale. "What is it?" Eris asked. Olsen shook his head as chills ran up his spine. "We're here. The Queen and Sherazade are in there. Sherazade looks to have been knocked out." There's a queen and a girl are in there. Because they don't know that's Sherazade. They do know that Sherazade's been taken here. But they don't know what she looks like or who she is. He is passed out for the moment. Come on, give me something. Okay, no, I just missed that. Olsen drew his dagger, using it as a mirror. In the middle of the room was a giant misshapen cactus, and behind it sat... Okay, wait. I think... There we go. And behind it sat whom Olsen assumed to be the Queen. And the girl lying on the floor beside her. Okay. Dang it, I hate when it does that. He took a breath and flicked his claw hand, readying a few shuriken. "I'm going after Dio. Eris, I need you to deal with anything coming from above me. Here's my spare kunai to use in case anything gets too close to you. It's pretty sharp, so be careful where you swing. Helen, concentrate on anything that comes from my left. Nathan, I need you to keep up with me as much as you can and defend my right. Understood? Everyone nodded. Eris running across the doorway to the other side, holding up her golden hook Beretta, cocking back the hammer with satisfying clicks. I can't do a gun cocking. It's just, it's not going to happen. Eris signaled, whoops, don't want that. Eris signaled she was ready as Olsen stepped out and hurled the shuriken as hard as he could. Dio turned around as streaks of pink flame slammed into his flesh, screaming with an ethereal sound.
Come now, Guardians, is that all you have to offer?
Taunted the queen. Oh, wait. You stand in the presence of your queen, Arda. You could at least provide me some entertainment, she taunted. No, taunted Arda. Go, go, go! Olsen shouted, running straight for the 15-foot-tall cactus. Helen hurled spell after spell at the cacti coming from the darkened sides. Shots popped from Eris' pistol, exploding the small cacti that descended from above, while Nathan stabbed and hurled each cactus soldier that he came across. Whoops. Olsen gripped his dagger harder, rocketing to Dio and circling the cactus while cutting through the thick outer hide where bluish-violet liquid leaked from. Olsen skidded to a stop, hurling another handful of shuriken as if they were pink comets, knocking Dio off balance. Just as Olsen was launching at the cactus again, Dio swung, sending Olsen flying into the wall, cracking it even further. His head pounded and his back throbbed, burning with pain, only to see Dio point a stumpy arm at him as if laughing. I'll give you something to laugh at, Olsen sneered. Launching off in a burst of pink flames, circling Dio as hot pink streaks. Again, Olsen skidded to a stop, heaving for breath just as the dozens of coins he left in Dio's flesh detonated, knocking him to the ground. I wish Matthew were here, Olsen mumbled. Arda's shrill scream echoed off the walls as she held up her hands. A wave of cactus soldiers flew toward Dio, healing the wounds and making him even larger. So, make him even larger. Before he could get up, Helen and Eris hurled all their attacks at him as Nathan charged ahead. Olsen heard his footsteps behind him, seeing the spearmen charge in. Nathan, stop! Retreat! Olsen commanded. But Nathan couldn't stop as Dio's arm slammed into him and tossed him to the far side. Eris instantly chased after him as Olsen turned back for Dio, forcing mana into his shuriken, causing it to grow huge. He launched it just as Dio... Oh. He launched it as... Okay. He launched it... Okay, there we go. That's what I was trying to say. He launched it just as Dio's arm came howling down on him, splitting the flesh of his arm. The cactus roared in pain until a blast of frosty air enveloped it, freezing it into solid ice and making Dio flail more. Olsen looked back to see Helen with... Oh, no. Now, we want to say with just with snowflakes. See Helen with snowflakes drifting around her. Eris and Nathan ran at Dio from across the room, joined by Helen as they began pummeling him. Eris fired high-caliber rounds into Dio's body, while Olsen attacked his legs in a blur of cuts. Nathan climbed up his body using his spear, driving it between his eyes. Dio roared in pain, sweeping Nathan off his body and throwing the spearman into the wall. Landing on the wall, Nathan launched back to the battle, slowing slightly to save his strength. Helen flashed across the floor, firing sacred arrows while intermittently using her wings of light to rain down feathers. We'll just say rain down feathers. That sounds a little better. Despite slowly wearing Dio down, they were wearing out faster. Wearing down, I should say. Olsen skidded to a stop, using the fire katana form of his cloak to cut through Dio's belly. Wearing... Okay. Dismiss. Olsen skidded to a stop, using the fire katana form of his cloak to cut through Dio's belly, followed by Nathan deepening Olsen's cut with a dozen swings and stabs. Okay, we're going to break that up. Nathan deepened Olsen's cut with dozens of swings and stabs. Eris pulled the pin on a mana grenade and hurled it at Dio's face, throwing him to the ground. As it detonated. There we go. Helen then rained down huge shards of ice infused with potent poison, pinning him to the ground and slowly beginning to melt. They all caught their breath momentarily until they heard clapping behind them. Bravo, Guardians, bravo. But you forget, I'm still here, Arda shouted. Everyone turned to see her, pressing a blade to the girl's neck. Olsen ready to hurl a shuriken, but Arda pressed the knife to the girl's throat harder. I wouldn't if I were you. You see, this is where you Guardians have failed. You never seem to get the person in the most danger out of the way first. And that will cost you. That will cost both you and Sherazad. Okay. I need some water. Okay. So, let me click a button over here for my... okay. Let's see. What do we do over here? Really? Okay, hold on. Let me go over here. Aha. I see. Well then. That's a little disheartening. Oh well. Okay, there we go. Now we're back to back to good. Okay. There we go. Now I'm doing. Without warning, the four of them were swept against the wall by Dio's arm. That's right, Dio. Press the life out of them, Arda shouted, her eyes wild and flashing with the sick light coming from Dio's body. Behind her, a cloud of black aura tore into existence. Arda turned around to see the black mage standing behind her, the anger in his eyes making the room hot. Master Black Mage, What are you... The mage shouted a furious hiss of whispers as a surge of power washed over the entire area, making Arda and the Guardians freeze in fear. His eyes narrowed, grabbing her arm as the two of them disappeared. Dio continued to press, but as he did, Eris managed to pull her arm out and aim her gun at his eye. Boom, she grunted and fired. The bullet tore through his eye, freeing them. Eris, Nathan, take the girl and return to the others. Find Lilin and make sure you are as far away from the city as possible. With a nod, the two of them picked up the woman and picked up the girl. Picked the girl up and carried her out. Olsen, what are you planning? Helen asked. If we keep fighting in the palace, it will collapse on Dio, setting off one major problem. But if I can get him outside the city, I'll have more room to move. And if he goes, it won't affect the city. Once I get him far enough, I want you to teleport me as high as you can, all right? Helen nodded, trusting Olsen's plan, even if she thought there was a better way. Taiga, welcome, welcome. I hope you were at least mildly entertained by what you see here today. And I'm probably not going to go for a ton longer because I have a really early day that I need to get to work tomorrow. So probably probably won't go much more than about another maybe 20 minutes or so. But that should give me enough time to get the whole chapter done. And at least you'll be here for that, right? Other than that, how's your evening, your morning, your afternoon, your day going? With a wave of her hand, she sent a mist of poison into Dio, making him lose focus as he stood, stumbling as he writhed over his eye. Oh, okay, cool. I think you told me what you were working on once before. Just so many things have happened on my end that it's kind of hard to keep track of a lot of things, but refresh my memory on what your story was about, if you so desire. Olsen then... Ah, right. Olsen then pushed aside his mana as the pink quartz power poured from his body, engulfing him in a slow-moving flame. Ah, okay. Nice and toasty. Wind curled around his body as the ninja leaned into his run, disappearing. He moved in a streak of light as his first strike sent the cactus through the ceiling, then hit him with a giant shuriken, hurling him into the desert. No sooner had Dio crashed into a drift of sand than Olsen was there, swirling around him in a blur of hot pink fire, hitting the cactus with giant shuriken to drive him further into the desert. Helen struggled to keep up with his speed, stretching out her stretching her teleports to their limit without snapping the rifts. Once sure he was far enough away, Olsen nodded to Helen, who put an arm around him and teleported up. Each time they would teleport, a sound like thunder rolled through the dunes. When Helen was sure she could go no higher, Olsen let go, pushing off a seal mid-air and rocketing down toward Dio. For a moment, Helen reached out for him, but decided to teleport to a safe distance instead. As he fell, Olsen reached for his pink quartz power, readying a shuriken and forcing his power into it. The weapon grew with each passing second. Its increasing weight made Olsen fall all the faster. Threads of quartz power snapped in the air all around him, making his skin itch with static. Moments before he was to slam into Dio, Helen appeared next to him, free-falling at his side. "What are you doing?" Olsen demanded. "I can't let you do this alone. You won't survive without me." Olsen grit his teeth, hurling the shuriken as hard as he could at Dio before Helen teleported them away. The shuriken slammed into the creature, driving it into the sand, creating a vast crater as a wave of sand flowing like water over the other dunes. From far away, Lillian and the others watched as a light in the sky descended and disappeared into the sand just as Nathan and Eris walked up to her, reuniting Sherazade with Jiur. Just as the light faded, the horizon exploded into a sick violet light that reached high into the sky, the thunder of the explosion tearing through the air. The shockwave washed over them, hazing the town with sand, but leaving it standing. The three of them became worried for their friends, grabbing the reins of 3 camels and heading in the direction the light had come from, leaving Jano in the charge of his people. All right. So, as always, if any of you, or if you have suggestions or critiques of any kind as I go along, feel free to put them in the chat over here so I can at least take them into consideration at the very least. Because, I am not a amazing writer by any means. At least I don't think so. So any critique, any help, any thoughts are welcome. Russelon looked over his body. He was finally a perfectly normal being. At last, I no longer need to take those bothersome pills. Okay, thank you, he shouted as Yulette handed him his new clothes. Romeo could only cradle Julianne's limp body, her rosy cheeks feeling cool to the touch while his hot tears fell over them. Oops. Stretching. Okay, so fell over them.
Why are you crying? It's a time for celebration, Russelon shouted as he dressed himself. And then walked over to what appeared to be a giant suit of robotic armor. He clicked his belt into place and began the startup sequence, servos and motors whining to life as the control program booted up. You do not deserve to live for this, not after taking Julianne away from me, Romeo shouted. Russelon laughed. Don't worry, she's still alive, but as part of me. If you'll excuse me, I have an appointment with Maid that I don't want to miss. Antonia stepped forward and drew her bow with tear-stained eyes and quivering lip. You had no right to take her life. You should have found another way to make your dreams come true, she shouted, letting go of her knocked power arrow. Russelon caught it with the hand of the machine and broke it in half. The circuits and wires running through the arms and body of the machine began to glow a light pink color. Do not tell me what to do, insolent girl, he shouted, bringing down the machine's arm hard on her. But was stopped by Matthew's doom. Aran leapt over him, sending Russelon skidding back into machinery with one brutal hit. Russelon picked up his head, spitting to the side and cracking his neck. If it's a fight you want, then it's a fight you'll get, he growled, rushing at them. Lillian moved Julianne and Romeo to a higher platform as Grendel teleported above them and froze the ground, making Russelon slide and trip.
Olsen. No, 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 no. Olsen's not here. Jack is the one that's here. Jack jumped onto the machine and hit Russelon in the face as... Oh, no. We want to just get rid of that one because Jack does not have that power. Matthew activated his warrior's overcharge, the sword glowing bright blue from the veins engulfed with mana. Just before Matthew could make contact, Russelon put his hand out and stopped the attack mid-swing. Jarring Matthew's arms and tossing him to the side. Okay, cool. Did you like make them more intense, or did you kind of like refine how they worked? Because I know sometimes, at least for me, sometimes powers, when the way sometimes powers work, you end up having to kind of like retweak them a little bit so they flow a little better in their explanation. Or did you maybe like realize you had like overpowered them a little bit? Okay, cool. Calling up an iron wall behind him, Matthew caught himself, pushing off and driving his sword through the machine's arm, breaking away chunks and sheets of metal. Jenny and Antonia released their spine arrows once Matthew's wall had dissipated, pushing Russelon into the machinery again. Russelon growled as he lifted the machine's good hand. Okay. And hit the ground hard, making them all lose their balance and breaking... Making them all... Okay, how about we do this? Breaking the ice and making them all lose their balance. Okay, yeah, that works. Because if she mains fire and lightning, those are kind of like two, at least from other media that I have seen, fire and lightning are kind of like, lightning is kind of like a subcategory of fire. So especially if she were to do ice, and if she mains fire, the way those mechanics work, she's already kind of hot-blooded, so she would basically have to think cooling. Think cooler. Which, I guess the way her powers work... I don't know how your story works. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head. Because fire is just, get angry, roar, fire, blast, burn. Whereas ice is an opposite of that, essentially. So you'd have to think much cooler. And you also almost have to concentrate a bit more, I guess, as a fire user. Okay. Are you working with I think, is it Dante's Inferno that has like levels of hell, or is it the Iliad that I'm thinking of? Do you know of? Or it could be a completely different... I know it was a difference. I could swear it was a Greek story of some kind. Oh, okay. Because for... The reason I ask is because if you wanted to be able to, I guess, work with it a little better, you could have maybe realms of hell that have different powers, like, so that way it's just not one gigantic fiery landscape. You could have, like, one that's ice, one that's more like a sweltering jungle, another one that is more temperate, but it has like whoever rules it has a different power or something like that. Oh, okay. Yeah, the reason I was referencing that story is because, if I remember correctly, the different levels of hell actually have differing like environments. So, and I think it's like the lowest, the ninth circle of hell or something like that, that has like, it's absolutely completely frozen or something like that. So that's why I was mentioning it. Ah, okay. In another split second, he rushed them again. But met with Iran. Iran's Maha, struggling and grunting against his forward charge to hold him back. Wait, okay, so here. Is Jack here or is Olsen? Olsen's back in area, and Jack is here in Megasha. Okay. With a shout, Jack, okay, ran to the weakened arm with a volley of brutal punches. Bits of shrapnel buried themselves into the walls as Jack dislodged it from the shoulder, clanging against the ground. Rattling against the ground, okay. There are locations that are different environments, such as a jungle and a desert and big cities and such. Oh, okay. So kind of like its own like subcontinent, I guess you could say.
Why are you taking away what is rightfully mine?
Ruslan shouted, flinging Iran to the side and running for the door, only to be blocked by Matthew.
Taking a life to ensure your own is never permissible.
Ah, okay. Something that's kind of interesting that you might grab some ideas from. Try if you can stand to watch it, try looking. I think it's called Eureka 7. It's an anime from a few years ago that actually has like this whole like second Earth theory, to where like the Earth is like either infested with or had these like big creatures that existed here long before, and the Earth got so like overrun by these creatures that a new Earth formed around the old one, but like miles above it. Yeah, it's kind of weird, and it kind of loses me in some spots because it has like some really heady storyline that it tries to go after, but it's interesting nonetheless. I'll give it that. It's kind of like this whole it's a light mecha anime, put it that way. It's like Gundam Light almost. It's pretty interesting. Growled, drawing his katana and unleashing a solar scythe, cutting through the machine's side. Yeah. Let's see. Let me look over here in my giant collection over here, and let me see how many episodes it all is. There it is. Yeah. Okay, so from the DVD box that I'm looking over here, it has about 50 episodes. So it's kind of a moderately long anime, but it's got an interesting story, to say the least. Jenny and Antonia ran behind Matthew, spraying the machine with hundreds of arrows that drove Russelon back into the room as Jack appeared above him. The mad scientist watched in horror and awe as Jack's pistol hummed with blood-red fire. Roaring with thunder, hitting the machine's chest, where a flash of pink light erupted. Jack and Jenny felt a strange resonance, their own... their crystal power buzzing within them. Iran lunged at Russelon once more. Again, bringing Maha down hard, only to be stopped by Russelon's good hand and knocked to the ground. Matthew charged to attack, but he too was sent careening back into Jenny and Antonia. Reeling. Ooh, I like that. It was reeling back into Jenny and Antonia. Grendel held out his staff as a bow formed a sacred arrow. Russelon turned to knock the staff from his hands. In a low rumble, Grendel teleported away, raining down fire and lightning on him. Short-circuiting most of his controls. Russelon growled as he turned to meet them, his face slowly turning red and his teeth. Yeah, that's what I... Teeth. No, not teeth. Teeth. Come on, spell it right. I guess. Because I'm basing it off of one of the powers that Maplestory used to have for the clerics, which were like the healer mages. I believe it was called Holy Arrow. And they didn't actually have a bow, and the way the power would appear is that the character would hold their staff forward and look like they're drawing a bow, but then like light appeared around the staff, as did an arrow. So it kind of like formed a bow and arrow, and then let go this bright golden arrow of like holy light. So that's kind of how it works, or how it's at least looking. As a glowing bow formed a sacred arrow. How's that? Does that work a little better? Okay. The machine jerked and twitched as it stood, looking as if it would fall apart at any moment, when he heard Romeo scream, landing on him with a sharp piece of shrapnel. "This is for Julianne!" Whoops. He shouted, driving the shrapnel through Russelon's heart, blood from his hands running down the edges. Russelon stumbled and coughed. Bright pink liquid spewing from his mouth as though it were blood. Jack joined Romeo, driving the claws of his knucklers into Russelon's chest. The machine teetered and then fell to the ground, bright light erupting from his body and blinding them all. Silence hung in the air until Russelon shouted. Shouted. Silence hung in the air until Russelon shouted from where he was strapped down. I need a period there.
No! No! What have you done? I had the perfect body!
Russelon screamed, looking at his hands. Matthew grabbed his throat and picked him off the ground with the blazing doom in the other. After what you've done, you don't deserve to... You don't Okay. After what you've done, you don't deserve to have this imperfect life, he snarled, ruby power spewing from his eyes like jets as he picked the end of the doom up. Okay, there we go. Like jets as he picked up the end of the doom and held the point to his chest. Let's see. Russelon's chest. Sweltering fire surrounding the blade. Russelon's... Oops. Cheeks... Russelon's cheek exploded in searing pain as Matthew burned the skin on the left side of his face. But I am not a cold-blooded killer like you, Matthew sneered, knocking him out with a punch. Ulet was nowhere to be seen, nor was he ever seen after that. Romeo knelt beside Julianne's body and cuddled her close. Maid and Carson came running into the lab, arguing as usual, but fell silent when they came upon the scene. All color seemed to fade into shades of gray. Let's see, probably another one here. Romeo reached out and grasped her slender hand, squinting back tears. Matthew dropped his sword, and as he and Jack fell to their knees. If only they had been faster, stronger, they could have prevented this. Romeo's soft sobs were the only deafening noise, filling their ears in the silence of the room. And then he felt it. It was ever so slight, but he felt Julianne's hand twitch. He stopped and looked into her face. Nothing told of life, but her hand slowly closed around his, gripping it. But her hand slowly closed around his. Romeo held his breath as Julianne took her own and slowly opened her eyes to see the face of Romeo. Romeo? What happened to... She caught sight of Carson, who reached to take her back to his house when Jack grabbed his hand hard, making the old man's wrist pop and crack. No, he growled, and began to tell Maid and Carson whom had caused the collapse of the Great Circle. Once Matthew had regained his fortitude, come on. Okay, so we're going to dismiss this because I don't think that's supposed to be what it's it. All right. Well, another 5 minutes. We should be... Let's see, where are we? We're so close to the end. Okay, so we're going to try to see if we can power through this to get to the end. Once Matthew had regained his fortitude, he and Lillian inspected the machine Russelon had piloted, peeling back pieces of metal to reveal what had caused the bright pink light from before. As they dug, it revealed a glassy object with a slight pink hue to it. Is that what I think it is? Okay, so I need to go back to that glow, because Jack and Jenny were getting a resonance, but I also need to make sure Matthew also has a resonance because Jack, Matthew, and Ginny felt a strange resonance. Their crystal power buzzing within. Okay, there we go. That works a little better. All right, it revealed a glassy object with a slight pink hue as they dug. Okay. Yes, it is, Lillian. That is the pink quartz. Thank you for revealing it to us, Eleanor said as she walked around the machine and leaned against it, crossing her arms. What are you doing here? Matthew growled, reaching for his katana and lowering his stance. It's not me you should be worried about, Eleanor replied, pointing her black-tipped finger behind him. Leaving come on, Matthew. Come on, Matthew. Just enough time to draw the doom and block Dragon's heavy swing, making a high-pitched squeal when both swords met edges. Matthew, meet Dragon, my finest student, Eleanor said as she reached for the crystal. Lillian reached for the crystal when Dragon grabbed her wrist and flung her back. Matthew pushed Dragon off and went for the crystal. Whoops. Just a bad spelling all around there. But was hit in the back with a concussive blow. Oh, okay. Okay, so let me back up a little bit. What I'm referring to here, at the beginning of the story, it's revealed at the end of Sacred Tears and the beginning of Guardians. The crystals that I'm referring to, there are 5 of them. There is the pink quartz, there is the ruby crystal, or the emerald crystal, the amethyst crystal, and the dark crystals. They all kind of work together, kind of like the Infinity Stones from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, to where if you use them all at the same time, you can basically do anything. So, the what I'm referring to here is that Russalon was using the let me back up. Oh, by the way, for anybody who is watching this later, for the next few minutes, there's going to be kind of a spoiler territory. So, Taiga, if you want me to explain this the way I am, tell me, or you can just tell me to shut up, and I won't go any further. Okay. So, the crystals themselves, which would be what happened before in between, like from the end of Sacred Tears to before the beginning of Guardians. The original masters of Maplestory, like I'm kind of using them as the parents of these Guardians. There was there's Athena Pierce, Dances with Balrog, Dark Lord, Captain Corinne, and Grendel the Really Old. In order to defeat the bosses that are in Maplestory, they are powerful, but they had to absorb an additional power. So they came across the crystals, and they absorbed their power. In doing so, they left behind what was called a husk, which was kind of like a container, empty of its power, but it's still kind of like its original container. So then, these kids, when they were born, the power went from their parents and passed on to the kids as now a permanent part of their life. Well, Ulet and Russelon here managed to get a hold of the actual pink quartz crystal husk, which, for the way the story is working, would be the actual container for Olsen's power. But he's not here at the moment, so he wouldn't really feel it all that much. But even if it's just a husk, it still has probably a good 10% of its power left in it, just from being its own little container. So that's kind of how I imagine it. And there is more to it than that, which it comes at the end of New Dawn. But that's kind of what's happening here. Did that explanation kind of make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Cool. So, for those of you who are watching later, sort of kind of spoilers are over now, so away we go. Went for the crystal, but he was hit in the back of a concussive blow. A bright blue tiger leapt from Dragon's back, roaring loud enough to knock the breath out of him. Knock his breath out and bring him to the ground. Aran was the next to try and break Dragon's stance, attacking as a blur. But Dragon blocked each attack with ease. Balked. No, not balked. Blocked each attack with ease. Okay, there we go. Each attack easily. Seals forming on Dragon's shoulder, one by one, turning red. With one swing, Aran from Dragon. Nope. Aran careened into a wall. When he got up, he kept blinking his eyes, but he couldn't see. Dragon smirked, walking between him and the machine as Eleanor reached for the crystal. That's panic. Something that you, Matthew, haven't had enough experience to use effectively yet. Dragon demeaned, holding up his sword to ready for the next strike. Would you like to find out? Matthew growled as he raised his sword and came charging hard. The two swords met. The two swords meeting broke glass with a high-pitched squeal. With a full overcharge, Matthew unleashed his panic. Dragon diverted the attack to the ground, then slammed the pommel of his sword into Matthew's gut. I think it's pommel. There we go. Oh. With a high-pitched squeal. Okay. With a full overcharge. Okay. Dragon, I have it, Eleanor cooed, holding up the husk, no bigger than her fist. Dragon sheathed his sword and walked over to her as they began to disappear in a dark cloud. Jack ran for them. holding out his hand to snatch away the husk. But he was a moment too late as they disappeared before he could get to it. Just as Jack turned around, Helen limped in with Olson over her shoulder. "What did we miss?" Olson asked, coughing as he tried to take his weight. Lillian went to Aran with questioning eyes as Aran shook his head.
"I'll explain on the way back to Herbtown,"
he said, activating a small homing beacon for the ship.
"Thank you, Guardians,
for helping us with this and discovering the truth about the Great Circle," Carson said. Jack looked to the leaders with cold eyes, pointing to Russelon. "Be sure he gets a good punishment. I want to stop off at El Nath to see Alcaster before we go home. There's a couple people in Herbtown I think don't know." Okay, no, I need to get rid of that. Could use a happy ending. What exactly did you hope to... okay, now, changing scenes again. What exactly did you hope to accomplish, Arda? Were you planning to use the wealth your royalty granted you just to feed your... Were you planning to use the wealth your royalty granted you to feed your own selfish needs? Eleanor barked as the black mage paced before Arda, livid whispers filling the air with a contemplative, if not forcibly calm, exterior. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Please, Master, give me another chance. I'll prove that I can bring you Ariant. Arda pleaded on her knees, her clothes tattered and torn from the anger-driven pummeling she'd been dealt. The black mage looked at her with wide eyes as Arda flew back to the wall, only to be dragged back to the feet of the mage, met with ethereal growls and whispers. Arda struggled to her knees, pulling her clothes back over her shoulders. Please, Master. You must give me one last chance. I swear I will bring you Ariant. I just need more time. I gathered the wealth of Ariant en masse to support your cause, she begged. The black mage narrowed his eyes, holding up his hand as chain spears began rising from the floor when he felt Eleanor's hand on his shoulder. He slowly looked at her, holding the chains in midair, each dancing as though they were snakes. Dancing like snakes. Time? You've used all the time he could afford. Besides, the Master has never really needed Ariant. He merely wanted to see that you could provide what you promised. Instead, you wallowed in the wealth it brought you, Eleanor sneered. Okay, I need some water first. I disposed of the queen for you at the Master's behest, and still you failed. You've had your chance. Now leave while I can still convince the Master to spare your pathetic life, Eleanor said, turning the black mage away and handing him a silver chalice of her mana potion and the pink quartz crystal. Crystal husk. pink quartz husk. Arda slowly stood and tried to spread her wings, but the numerous broken bones in them made it impossible to do so, walking away with drooping shoulders. The stabs of pain made her angry, turning to face them once more. "I will bring you..." The black mage raised his hands as the chains shot forward and drove through her body and into the ground. She coughed and heaved for a moment before the mage shot a sphere of black power at her and reduced her to ashes that scattered across the ground. With a shuddering sigh, he turned to look out the window of his castle. Turned to the window of his castle overlooking Edelstein. Okay. Let's see. How let's see. Let me see if I can find a picture of kind of what I'm looking for here. Well, kind of like, let's see. Let me come back over here. Like, the way I'm seeing it is just this ball of, like, again, because he has the way the black mage, you know what? Let me try to bring up a picture of the black mage himself first, because that'll probably help more of kind of what I'm after. Oops. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Open. Okay. So this is a picture of the actual black mage from the game. And this is basically the same picture that I'm using of how I'm making the black mage look. So when I say a sphere of black power, like, this is the best way I know how to describe it, because it's just essentially he deals in, how did I describe it in this story? I can't remember exactly how I described it. I think I called it exactly like black magic, like literal just magic that is black. So there's, I guess you could almost call it like it doesn't really have the same effect, but kind of like just a black hole that he just fired at her. That's kind of how I imagine what's happening. Because there's really, at least that's how I imagine it. But it doesn't have like the same gravity effects. It's just, just this dense, dark, black thing that gets fired at her, and she just goes poof. She's gone. So that's kind of how I'm imagining it. But if maybe an orb of charged darkness. Okay. Let's see. Oh, what if we were to do this? For the mage's power. Whoop, no. Come on. Reduced her to ashes. Scattering before a wave Yeah, I get what you're talking about here. I'm kind of trying to follow the train of thought as well. That's really kind of what I'm after. She coughed and heaved for a moment before a wave of the mage's power reduced her to ashes, scattering across the ground. Mage's blackened power? Oops. Pure wave of the mage's blackened power reduced her to ashes, scattering. Okay. So how does this sound? She coughed and heaved for a moment before a wave of the mage's blackened power reduced her to ashes, scattering across the ground. Like, just... Okay. Yeah, because, like, the way I'm imagining it happening, at least the way in my head, is like if you're basically looking at her from the black mage's perspective, and all you see is like she's there one moment and he like drags his hand across his sight, but as he does that, she just poof, just turns into ash. That's it. There's no like scream, there's no splatter, there's no roar or anything of power. It's just poof, gone. So I'm trying to give, like, instead of being from the mage's perspective, like have it in a different perspective. So that way you can kind of see what's happening. So this is the best way I know how to explain exactly what's happening. So if it sounds okay, then we can kind of leave it there, I think. Momentarily. Okay. Okay, cool. With a shuddering sigh, he turned to the window of his castle overlooking Edelstein. Until Eleanor draped her arms over his shoulders. My master, we have recovered the last of the husks. All we need to do is wait for them. All we need to do is wait for them to fully train their power. Back to its original potency. The black mage seemed to smile as he held up the husk in the light, dropping it into his hand with a satisfied catch. Whispers hung in the air before looking at her questioningly. Eleanor shrugged as she walked before him and put her hands on his shoulder, leaning her head down onto his chest. Dragon said that he had a personal matter to attend to. The mage nodded as he held the crystal to the light and admired it. At last, he had all the materials he needed. Checky walked to the back alley after hearing the bell since Claudine was busy. And called out the password. Which was answered promptly with its counterpart. So, what have you gathered? Dragon faced the Guardians fighting Matthew for a short while, but saying that he could feel the immense power that has yet to come from that young man. He is far from fully awakened, but is already almost as powerful as Dragon. However, there is some bad news. The Black Mage and his forces have obtained the pink quartz. So he has all 5 crystals? So he has all 5 crystals. What do we do now? Checky asked. I don't know. From here on, it is going to be a game of hide and seek. I'll try to stall the Black Mage as much as I can. As much as possible, but I don't know how much I can do. That's all right. Just keep on it. Fabric fluttering in the dark sounded as the informant left, and Checky went back to tell Claudine the disheartening news. Just as they touched down, Jack was the first off the ship and went through the village looking for Humanoid A. When he found him, he gave him a pendant he had seen in DeLange's house. He gave him a pendant. Oh, no. Jack gave him a pendant he'd seen in DeLange's house when he found him. Humanoid's head twitched and shook. And then his eyes looked as though he recognized something. Looked like he recognized something. Dr. DeLange, Doctor in Advanced Alchemy in Megacia. Philea, where is she? He asked desperately. Jack beckoned him, showing him a snow rose he had gotten from Alcaster, and gave it to him. Jack led him through the crowds until he found Philea. That's probably Philea, not Philea. Philea, and handed her the rose, making Philea become lost in thoughts. Whoa, what happened here? Until finding Humanoid handed her the rose, making Philea become lost in her thoughts as DeLange. Jack handed her the rose. As DeLange walked up to her. Okay, there we go. That sounds a little. Humanoid A, did you ask him to give this to me? She asked. Philea, it's me, Orden. The fairy stared at him for a while, studying his features as her eyes widened. small tears appearing as she sniffed the rose once more. Sniff the rose again. Her eyes widened and small tears appeared as she sniffed the rose again. Sometimes war can have happy endings, Jack thought, as he left them to their thoughts and conversations. All right, so that is now done. I'll kind of go back through these last little review suggestions over here on my own.